I, 29, female, am the youngest of 3 siblings. While growing up, I have always known that my oldest sister Eleanor never liked me. She didn't have any issue with my middle sister Terry, but hated me for some reason ever since I was a baby. Eleanor was my first bully and would bully me throughout my school years. When I reached my teen years, I started finding my individuality, i.e. punk clothing, dark makeup, heavy metal, etc. And she would make fun of me in front of my friends and call me names like Cruella. Every day with Eleanor was hard. She would scream at my face, punch me, or try to push me down the stairs by sneaking up behind me. I was terrified to be around her. Our parents did see her being mean to me, but they chose to stay out of it as much as they could. They would tell me how sisters sometimes fight and that I should have more patience for Eleanor since she was having a hard time adjusting to her siblings. When she moved out after getting a job, I finally felt free. My middle sister Terry was much better and she was always kind to me. She taught me to put on makeup, bought me my first heels, and has continued to have a good relationship with me. Somehow Eleanor hates this and has told Terry several times to stay away from me, but Terry doesn't listen to her. I thought after Eleanor moved out that she and I would have a better relationship, but I was wrong. She eventually got married to her now husband, Gary. In my family, reaching 21 is considered a big deal, and when my sisters had their 21st birthdays, they threw parties with their friends and families and generally had a great time. This made me excited for my own 21st birthday, which was approaching. I was looking forward to my birthday celebration. Well, a week before my 21st, my middle sister called to tell me that the oldest was pregnant, but she hadn't told everyone yet. I was happy for her, but then I felt my stomach drop as I realized she hadn't made the announcement yet, which meant I already knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. During the celebration of my birthday, my sister came to my party wearing a shirt that said, "New Mommy," in gold. I was shocked to see this. While I had anticipated the possibility of her revealing the pregnancy on my birthday, I had hoped she would, at the very least, wait for me to cut the cake. Obviously, people started asking her about it, and she loudly announced how she was pregnant. Everyone erupted in joy while my sister stood in the middle, soaking in all the attention. I felt so awkward because now my birthday celebration had turned into her pregnancy announcement. When I congratulated her, she ignored me as if I wasn't even present and continued to talk to our relatives about how she and her husband were thrilled and looked forward to becoming new parents. I felt like tearing up because no one seemed to want to celebrate me anymore, so I decided to walk out of my own birthday party. Terry ran after me as she understood how I felt. Later, my parents questioned me why I walked out, and when I told them the reason, they reprimanded me. They told me how I was being childish and that I should be happy for my sister. The thing was that I was happy for my sister, but she could have made this announcement any other day. However, she chose to announce it on my birthday knowingly. She knew all along that it would shift all focus on her, and she had been successful in doing so. And since that day, I decided to stop inviting Eleanor to all my birthday parties. Terry was also cautious and kept her distance from Eleanor since she didn't want to be treated like me. When I was getting married to my then fiancé Paul, I didn't want to invite Eleanor to my wedding because I was afraid that she would do something again to steal my spotlight. My parents, however, begged me to invite her as a guest because they were afraid that our relatives would talk about us not getting along. For the sake of my parents, I agreed and warned them to talk to Eleanor so that she would be on her best behavior. Paul and I had saved our hard-earned money over the years to have our dream wedding just like we always wanted. The one thing I was most looking forward to was my wedding dress. I have always had issues with my self-esteem, so I wanted to feel like $1,000,000. All in all, my dress was over $800, which may not seem like much, but it was a lot for me. And I had worked hard to budget this for my wedding dress. I love my dress, and there was beading and some embroidery all over the bodice and hem trailing up and down the skirt. It made me feel like a princess, and I was really happy with it. I had shown the dress to Terry, and not even my mom, since I wanted to keep my look a secret. The only issue was that I needed some alterations on my hip, as I was a size smaller. Alterations can be pricey, so I asked my aunt, who I knew would be happy to help me. My aunt agreed and asked me to come and give it to her. I visited my aunt's place with my dress, and she took some of my measurements so she could alter the dress accordingly. She understood how expensive the dress was and assured me that she would work on it carefully. We talked for some time, and I requested her to not share pictures of my dress with anyone, and she assured me that no one would ever know. My aunt was going to call me a week later after the alterations were done. A week passed and there were no calls from my aunt. I called her multiple times and she wasn't picking up. I was a bit worried since she was quite old, so I thought maybe something had happened to her. As a last resort, me and Terry drove to my aunt's place to check on her. My aunt opened the door looking quite grim. I questioned her as to why she had not been picking up my calls. This is when she told me how she was so sorry for everything and started to cry. Terry and I stood there unable to understand what was happening. My aunt then took me inside her room-turned-work studio where she had kept my dress. I screamed in horror when I saw that my dress was completely torn. The bodice of my dress was torn right in half in the front, the beads strewn everywhere, and the puffy skirt was all ripped out. I almost fell down on the floor in shock. Terry questioned my aunt as to what had happened and asked her if she had done this to my dress. My aunt shook her head and told us how Emily had visited her a few days ago with her dogs. She had told Emily that my dress was with her and she was working on it. Apparently, when she went to get Emily's lunch, one of her dogs accidentally got into this room. Emily had begged my aunt to not tell me that this was her fault. Since then, my aunt had been trying her best to fix the dress, although it was pretty impossible at this point. She told me that an estimate to repair the dress would cost me even more than the actual price of the dress, since the material was too good. All I could do was break down while Terry tried to console me. My aunt looked broken-hearted too, as she kept apologizing repeatedly. I then told her that she could have locked her doors and maybe the dog would not have got in. However, my aunt told me that she had in fact locked the doors, but somehow the dog had still managed to get in. Hearing this, my blood ran cold. I realized that maybe there was a possibility that Emily had knowingly opened the doors for the dogs to get in and destroy my dress. I was beyond devastated when I told my parents about the dress. My dad offered to buy me a wedding dress, telling me that since I didn't take any money from them for my wedding, I should at least allow him to buy me a wedding dress. I was heartbroken, as I had been so sure I would be getting married in my dream dress, but unfortunately I had no other choice left. I informed my parents about my suspicion about Emily, but they immediately tried to defend her and blame the dog. However, Terry supported me and told my parents that we needed to talk to Emily and get to the bottom of this. If Emily had truly and intentionally destroyed my wedding dress, then she would no longer be a part of my celebration. The next day, I asked Emily to come to our parents' place, where I and Terry were driving to as well, under the pretense that I wanted to discuss wedding plans with everyone. I knew Emily wanted to be a bridesmaid, so she excitedly arrived without any suspicions. I told her straight away that I had found out everything from our aunt. I watched the color drain from Emily's face as she stammered to say how her dogs are generally very obedient, but had somehow managed to sneak into the room. Terry questioned her directly if perhaps she was blaming her dog when the truth was that she was jealous of my dress and destroyed it. Emily immediately began to yell at us, saying, why would she ever be jealous of someone like me who had less than her? I then pointed out to her how she had always tried to one-up me all our childhood. And hearing this, Emily scoffed and told me how I was being delusional and that she didn't even like my wedding dress. This is when we caught her in her lie. I asked her how she even disliked my dress when I had never even shared pictures of it. My mom agreed and looked at her intently. Emily began to stammer and say how when her dog destroyed the dress, she then saw it, but something felt off. My dad firmly asked her to not lie anymore and questioned her if she had in fact been involved in destroying my dress. In the end, after she was cornered, Emily finally spilled the truth. She tearfully acknowledged her jealousies and insecurities, confessing that she couldn't bear to see me happy on my wedding day. The revelation left my parents stunned, grappling with the realization that their eldest daughter had intentionally sabotaged my happiness. She begrudgingly agreed that she had snuck into my aunt's room to see my dress and had left the door ajar. She knew her dog would do the rest of the work. She had then begged our aunt to not tell me anything, perhaps thinking that she could get away with it. Our poor aunt had clearly been manipulated and had been worried about breaking the news to me since she didn't know how I would react. I was so pissed at Emily that I wanted to choke her right there. Emily started to tell me how she has never liked me ever since we were children, and even as an adult she can't help but continue to dislike me. Terry defended me and told Emily that she should have dealt with her emotions by going to therapy rather than destroying my things or bullying me. My dad, for the first time, stood up for me and told Emily that he was disappointed in her. I was still angry and hurt, so I asked her to pay me $800 back for the dress since she had now publicly admitted her mistake. Emily seemed taken aback and told me how she did not have that kind of money, but I threatened to take her to court so we could settle this legally. My mom, torn between her two daughters, attempted to mediate between us. My mom told me that since my sister was apologizing to me, then I should have more grace for her. However, I reiterated that I needed my money back since she and her dog were responsible for destroying my precious dress. In the midst of the confrontation, Terry stood by my side, offering support and emphasizing the gravity of Emily's actions, and yelled at Emily that she needed to get over her jealousy. In the end, Emily did manage to cough up $500, only telling me how she didn't have the rest of the money, and that as her family, I should just let this go. Furious and hurt, I decided to cut ties with Emily and uninvited her from my wedding, realizing that her envy had led to her destroying such a significant event in my life. My mom tried to mediate again, but this time both my dad and Terry told her that Emily had crossed the line and there was no going back. With my wedding dress irreparably damaged, I had to choose a new one, which my dad paid for me as he had promised. Despite the challenges, my wedding turned out well. Instead of dwelling on the negativity with Emily, I chose to direct my focus towards my future life with my husband. I believe witnessing me getting married without her inclusion might have promoted Eleanor to finally grasp the consequences of her actions. She sent me a bouquet of flowers congratulating me. However, I chose to ignore it and refrain from responding as I was still hurt and angry about what she had done to me. I stood by my decision and never reached out to her, even though my mom would occasionally plead with me to forgive her because she is family. Years passed without any communication between us. Throughout all this, Terry and I had a wonderful relationship and we would hang out all the time. Last year, I gave birth to my first child. My husband was with me in the delivery room and was my rock. Later, when I came back home, my parents came to visit me. They were happy to see my baby and spent some time with my son. Later, my mom insisted that enough was enough and that I should get back in touch with my sister. She told me how both me and Emily were now mothers and we needed to get over our past so eventually our children can become close. I don't know if it was my pregnancy hormones or the happiness of being a mother, but I started to consider my mother's request. When Emily heard about my son, she called me to congratulate me, and this time, instead of letting it get to voicemail, I picked up. She was surprised that I wanted to talk to her, but I told her how I had been thinking a lot and that it seemed time to let bygones be bygones. Emily immediately agreed and apologized to me again, and she expressed deep remorse for the hardships she had subjected me to all those years ago, revealing that she had come to comprehend her jealousy and mental health struggles through therapy. She assured me that going forward, she would be a better older sister to me, and that she was going to help me and my son wherever she could. Given the new chapter I was entering as a first-time mother, I chose to forgive her for everything. My primary focus was on ensuring my baby would grow up surrounded by boundless love. Since the birth of my son, Emily has indeed stood by her promise and been there for me in every possible way. She has offered assistance wherever she could, and Terry, much like myself, has been pleasantly surprised by Eleanor's transformed behavior since we last spoke to her. The three of us have gradually started spending time together, and it genuinely appeared that Emily had overcome her past issues. Now, coming on to the incident that happened. My son just turned 1, and we threw a small party to celebrate. So the party was going well. We had ordered a cute cake. The decorations were on point and everyone was having a good time. As my husband and I brought out the cake for my son, everyone started to sing happy birthday. And suddenly I watched Emily walk towards the DJ and grab the mic from him. People turned to look at her as she then announced to the room that she was pregnant again and had waited until now to share this happy news. I stood there in shock, absorbing her words, and it all seemed like a bad joke to me. My 21st birthday memories came reeling back to me when I was first upstaged by her, and now my son's first birthday was ruined by her announcement again. The whole room became quiet, with everyone looking around awkwardly, not knowing how to react. My dad stood there motionless, not quite understanding why Emily would do something like this. And Emily then walked up to me in front of everyone and announced that since she had always been there for me for my first child, she expected me to be there for her second child and help her take care of the baby. Emily continued to say how she would want nothing more than a grand baby shower organized by me for her baby. I was shocked, to say the least, and looked at her blankly. She then handed me a small envelope and told me that she was looking forward to seeing what her baby shower would look like. I opened the envelope to find a to-do list for her baby shower. I couldn't believe her audacity. Anger surged within me, fueled by years of pent-up frustration, and I had enough of her behavior. My family watched as I started tearing the list into shreds right in front of her. And that's when all hell broke loose. Eleanor's smirk vanished, replaced by a shocked expression, and then the waterworks started. She burst into tears, further drawing the attention of everyone at the party. My dad sternly asked Emily's husband to take her away while my mom tried to defend her, saying that as my son's aunt, she deserves to be here for the celebration. Meanwhile, Terry, my ever-supportive sister, shot me an understanding look and decided to take matters into her own hands. She held Emily and politely escorted her out so that we could try to continue on with the party. Unlike my family, who was used to Emily's antics, my husband looked utterly shocked with everything that was happening. He was obviously angry at my sister for stealing the limelight from our son, but he was furious at me as well, not just for tearing up the list, but for causing a scene on what was supposed to be a joyous occasion. In his eyes, I had ruined our son's first birthday, and he didn't hold back in expressing his disappointment to me later privately. As the party continued, the tension still lingered. My parents tried to play peacemakers with my relatives, but it was evident that the damage was done. It was awkward after Emily's announcement, and eventually we cut the cake, had our meal, and the guests left slowly. In the aftermath of the party, my husband and I had a heated argument. He believes that I should have taken the high road by waiting for the guests to have left until I addressed the issue, since Eleanor's actions had already overshadowed our son's special day. I argued back that she would always continue to do this unless I finally stood up to her and humiliated her in front of everyone. I just couldn't let her turn every significant moment in my life into a platform for her own agenda. So, AITA here for standing up to my sister? Did I really ruin my son's first birthday, or was I justified in standing up for myself against years of mistreatment? Update 1. Wow, thank you all for the overwhelming response. I didn't expect this to blow up. I appreciate the support and the different perspectives. Some of you suggested talking to Emily and apologizing to her for humiliating her so publicly, while others think she's the one who owes me an apology. I refuse to apologize because this wasn't my fault. She has continuously disrespected me and is now starting to disrespect my son. Why can't she announce her pregnancies at her own parties? She doesn't have any need to take the limelight away from me and my family, but she continues to do that since she just can't get over her inferiority complex for some reason, and I am absolutely tired of her antics. I plan on sitting down with my husband and explaining to him everything after he calms down so he understands my whole history with Emily. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update. I sat down with my husband and explained everything to him when we both had time. Firstly, I told him about my childhood and teenage years when my sister would bully me and humiliate me in front of my friends. His eyes widened in shock as he had no idea previously that she was so mean to me growing up. Of course I had mentioned a few instances here and there, but I had never gone into specifics with him. Then I told him about my 21st birthday party where she had pulled the same stunt with me and how humiliated that made me feel. I explained to him that this had been happening to me my entire life, and that she couldn't let me have the spotlight any day. He was shocked after hearing everything from my perspective. He told me that when I had mentioned to him about the wedding dress and how Emily had ripped it up, he thought it was just a one-time thing. He got along well with his sister, so he had no idea how terrible Emily had been to me all my life. He started to apologize to me for being angry and told me that he had no idea that I had such deep wounds. He explained to me that he was just excited for our son's birthday, but with the drama between me and my sister, he felt that it ruined the entire mood of the party, to which I completely agreed with. I told him that I never wanted our son's first birthday party to go this way, and I just couldn't take her antics anymore. We hugged, and I knew that all was forgiven between us. My husband then told me firmly that we needed to cut things off with Emily because he was scared that she would treat our son this way and humiliate him in the future as well. He told me that our son might start to notice this while growing up, and he didn't want our son around Emily. I agreed with him and informed him that I was already planning on cutting her off. I will be informing my parents about this as well, so that they can know that both I and my husband have decided to do this, and nothing can change our minds. Meanwhile, since the party, Emily has tried to call me and sent me several messages which I have refused to open because at this point, no matter what she says, our relationship can neither be repaired or go any worse than this. I have no idea if she blames me for ruining her pregnancy announcement or is apologetic because regardless of what she says, I won't believe her anymore. I had always foolishly forgiven her before, but when it comes to my son, I can't let my sister ruin his life also. My son might not remember his first birthday, but me and my husband will remember the day forever. What my sister did will forever be etched onto our memories. Hence, I will block her so she can never again get a chance to ruin our lives. Update 3. As I had mentioned earlier, I called my parents to talk to them regarding my decision to cut off Emily forever. And my dad replied back that he completely understood my decision because after what she had done, he didn't want to talk to her as well. My mother started to protest, saying that I was being too cruel to my sister and I should never say never. Hearing her say this, something snapped inside me, and this is when I finally lost it at my mom. After watching her treat Emily as her golden child for years, I was done being pushed aside. I started to tell her the various things that Emily had done to me over the years and how she had failed to protect me as a parent. I reminded her that she should have been a better parent then and asked Emily to stop or take her to therapy and then let her get away with everything. This might have made our relationships better and we could have continued to be sisters, but that didn't happen, so she should stop asking me to forgive her. I told her firmly that if she didn't respect mine and my husband's decisions to cut off Emily permanently, then we would have no choice but to cut her off as well. Hearing this, my mom started crying on the other line, telling me that I was being too cruel and that she could never live without her grandchildren. She apologized to me and told me that although she didn't support my decision to cut off a family member permanently, she would keep her opinions to herself in the future. I wasn't convinced by this and told my dad that for the time being, only he was allowed to see my son. My mother protested, but I cut her off, saying that she was clearly supporting a bully, so she was a bully as well. Hence, I didn't want my son to grow up around such adults. I asked her to think long and hard about how she had failed me as a parent and whether she would like it if she was in my shoes. Since our call, my mom has sent me several messages saying that she can't choose between her children. The thing is that I never asked her to choose between her children, but for her to blindly support my sister kind of rubs me the wrong way. Obviously, I will not cut off contact with my mom completely, but I can't help but hope that one day she realizes how wrong she was for supporting my sister and not standing up for me. Update 4. It's been 4 months since my last update. I know a lot of you wanted to know if anything changed between me and my sister. I have continued to keep my distance from Emily and have blocked her from all social media accounts and phones. When our parents have family events, even though she's there, I completely ignore her. After publicly humiliating her, I think she's wary of approaching me and I act like she doesn't exist anyway. Terry has also cut off Emily completely. At first, she didn't want anything to do with her after my son's birthday party, but my mom pressured her to be in touch with Emily, and then Emily started to behave weirdly with her also. This made Terry quickly realize that Emily was starting to behave with her the same way that she used to behave with me, so she cut her off and blocked her as well. Me and Terry have continued to have a wonderful relationship, and she will be the only aunt to my children, which I am quite happy and comfortable with. I decided to join therapy recently to work on my past, realizing that I should have cut off Emily long ago and never forgiven her. The therapy has been a transformative journey, helping me understand the impact of my sister's actions on my mental health and self-esteem. It has also empowered me to prioritize my own well-being and focus on building a positive future for myself, my husband, and my child. Looking back at the incident during my son's first birthday, I recognize the significance of standing up for myself, even if it meant causing a scene. I refuse to apologize for defending my boundaries and protecting my family from further toxicity. As for my husband, all is good between us. He has come to understand the depth of his sister's toxicity. Our relationship has grown stronger as we navigate parenthood together, focusing on creating a positive and nurturing environment for our son. I am lucky every day to have a partner and a best friend like him. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.